As Sri Lanka goes to elections on the 21st of September, I am in conversation with leader of opposition and one of the main contenders in these elections, Mr. Sajith Premadasa. So thank you so much for speaking to NDTV.
You're most welcome.
So my first question to you, we speak at a time when these elections are being very closely followed and very closely monitored across the world, especially in India. What, according to you, makes these elections so very important and crucial uh, for the world to follow and also for Sri Lanka from a future point of view, sir?
Sri Lanka as a country is facing multiple crises in the economic sphere, the social sphere, the political sphere, and we don't have a legitimate government in the sense the present administration is an extension of the administration that was primarily responsible for making Sri Lanka bankrupt. It's the very same majority, parliamentary majority, that promoted the policies that led to bankruptcy that are sustaining this present administration. So the Sri Lankan people are eagerly waiting to express their opinions, provide their mandate for change. Change that will make people better, change that will make the country prosperous.
Those are very serious statements, given the fact that in the last 2 years, the present president, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, has said, and the world also feels that one of his biggest success has been that he's brought some stability to the Sri Lankan economy, and he's ensured that the recovery has been expedited. And you are saying that he's part of the problem and not the solution. Essentially, that's what you're saying.
If one gets off their laurels and get onto the streets and talk to the poor, the downtrodden, the self-employed, the labor force, the entrepreneurs, the rural, urban, estate sectors. If you look at the major sectors of society, other than those who are super rich, people have been impacted detrimentally. And if I may provide you with some statistics, stats which were ascertained by the government statistical department has illustrated that more than 260,000 micro, small and medium-sized enterprises have closed down. Millions have gone into unemployment. Millions have become poor. The government does not have a practical poverty alleviation strategy. The micro, small and medium-sized enterprises contribute to 50% of GDP, employs over 4 million. So people are suffering from the policies of the government that has basically suffocated the people. That is because the governance policies, in order to attain stability, has been to contract the economy, make the economy small, make livelihoods small. So, if you're achieving stability at great human cost, at cost where people are suffering, I don't think that's the right way to do it. Where we differ,
Yeah, I was coming to just your action plan.
Where we differ is we will grow ourselves out of the problem. We have to go on a massive economic growth trajectory, the growth path. Huge amounts of FDI coming in, foreign direct investment, export-led growth, restructuring of society to ensure that entrepreneurship thrives, that the stranglehold that the bureaucracy and various rules and regulations that have basically suffocated entrepreneurship, those have to be freed. Ensure that businesses flourish. Ensure that the micro, small and medium-sized industry given adequate support, affordable capital, affordable working capital, and also ensure that a whole country has an integrated policy
Okay.
towards prosperity. What you have right now is not inclusivity, it's exclusive. Even in this situation of bankruptcy, it's the super rich getting richer. Corruption is rampant. Uh, Normal competitive procedures are shelved. Unsolicited proposals are utilized to ensure that the bigwigs in society prosper.
Okay. But how do you go about solving that? I ask you this because one of the biggest concerns has been that Sri Lanka has a fragile economic health. And there is only that much of funds that are available to be able to do the kind of development that you envisage and you propose. So how do you think you will go about fixing the funding problem and also ensuring that the economy grows instead of contracting as you say it is?
You're quite correct by stating that it is fragile.
Mhm.
So that fragility does not uh, give you an excuse to be corrupt, to loot the public treasury,
Is that
to
what's
rob the
happening?
country, of course,
Okay.
to rob the country.
Mm.
What we propose to do is to ensure that we follow good governance practices, ensure that the major indices that have a contributory factor with regard to foreign direct investment, the good governance indices, ease of doing business. In the anti-corruption index, we should rank very high in being anti-corrupt. Generally speaking, we should have responsible government, transparent government, and government that is accountable. All three are lacking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very confident through a leadership that becomes a role model for the whole country and for the rest of society. I and my team will ensure that there will be greater transparency and openness in all of the government transactions. People should know where their public funds are spent, where those monies are utilized. We will make sure that all governmental transactions will be put through a public digital infrastructure uh, program
Mm-hmm.
so that everyone has access to information on what the government does. We will also, on the other hand, encourage the private sector, which we believe is one of the engines of
Growth.
economic growth.
Mm.
But growth has to be with equity. It cannot be growth that is biased towards a particular class, a particular uh, set of individuals or groups that are in the higher echelons of society.
Mm.
We have to make sure that growth takes place with equity, equitable growth. And we have to ensure prosperity is shared, not prosperity that is exclusive to a particular group of favorites. It cannot be crony capitalism as we have right now. It has to be capitalism with a human face, inculcating the social democratic ideals. Ensure
Mm-hmm.
that wealth is created,
Right.
but wealth that is created is equitably redistributed in society in order to ensure that social justice is also achieved.
That's a very lofty goal and an ideal scenario that you said in terms of ensuring that there is justice, equitable justice, and at the same time, some of these engines of growth are actually unshackled. But one of the criticisms that your party has faced is that while all these ideals are wonderful, they get the economy back on track, but they also lead to possibly economic mismanagement in the sense that if cost of living has to be addressed, it cannot be by increasing subsidies, it cannot be by making things free, especially at a time when public finances are at a precarious state. Respond to that criticism, sir, that that is being leveled, that you are in favor of so many subsidies and freebies that it could jeopardize the health of the economy.
To be very honest with you, we will eradicate the crony capitalist structure that is existing at present. We will ensure that growth is the major phenomenon. in our economic program. Of course, this government doesn't understand growth because they want to contract growth. It's a growth contraction policy. It's making everything small. To show everybody that everything is stable, you're making everything small. That is not the way to go. We have to grow ourselves out of the problem. Do you know how many factories have closed down? Do you know how many youth have become unemployed? Do you know how many people are poverty stricken now? So, stability with malnutrition, maternal and child malnutrition, stability with huge unemployment, stability with growth contraction, stability while losing livelihoods, stability while having lower standards of living. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. Ours is totally converse. But I must say, we are also very well aware that we have to ensure that our macroeconomic indicators are in the positive.
Yeah.
So we know very well the major macroeconomic indicators. We have to have a balance. We have to ensure that we eradicate inflation, eradicate unemployment, have economic growth, ensure that balance of payments deficit, trade deficit, budget deficit
Are under control, yeah.
Exactly. We are very well aware. But the difference between the government and us is we don't just focus on macroeconomics. We look at the microeconomic aspect.
Okay.
We look at the individual. We look at the businesses and the enterprises. We look at the households. So we are taking an overarching integrated approach, whereas this government is only keen on showing to the whole world and to a particular class in our country that everything is stable and fine.
Let me then switch tracks and ask about, the fact that the significance of this election. India has strategic interests in the region. India has had and has very close ties with Sri Lanka. How do you view the India-Sri Lanka relationship from here on, in the backdrop of what has happened in the last 2 years, the recovery that has happened, how it led to the 2022 turmoil, and most importantly, the trajectory from here on between Colombo and New Delhi?
When you talk of recovery, I must say in these very difficult times and dire times, India has been one of the countries that has been very generous and very supportive. And I would like to extend a very big thank you to the Indian government, Sri Modi's government, and also to the people of India and to the various states that have come forth to help our country, the state governments.
Yes.
So a big thank you. Now, having said that, I don't think Sri Lanka is in the correct path to recovery. A path that is ridden with human collateral damage.
You mentioned that about inequality and
That's
lack
right.
of justice.
So that type of recovery we cannot accept. That is not recovery. That is putting the burden of everything on the working people of the country while saving the super rich.
You mentioned that
can't happen.
You mentioned that.
That can't happen in that manner. So we will ensure that we have a very balanced policy.
Now I'm asking the India-Sri Lanka relationship.
So where India comes in is our external affairs policy will be to promote our national interest. We will do what is right by our country. And it is in the interest of our country to have cordial relations with India and the rest of the powers in the world and the rest of the nation states. We do recognize that we have a special relationship, a kinship, a camaraderie between our two countries, and we have a history of positive, progressive, and good relationships. And we have to build upon that. And I think we will ensure that mutual interests that matter to both of us are accomplished in our external affairs.
That's wonderful. And where does then that leave the other big question, which is around China? it is a fairly significant player in the region. And the last couple of years have also seen a rise in Chinese investments, rise in Chinese naval presence in the region. How do you view the China equation for Sri Lanka and for the entire region?
Well, as I mentioned to you, in our external relations, we have a special relationship with India, no doubt. But we also have to work with all of the other major nation states. I'm one of the few, actually I'm the only politician who has even proposed that India be included in the United Nations Security Council, because that is a clear reflection on the geopolitical status and reality of India. Having said that, we as a country, we will work with all other countries. We work with all other democracies. We work with all other nation states to ensure that Sri Lanka's national interests are achieved. And we will in no way work towards downgrading the security and geopolitical interests of others. Not so. We will be having extremely strategic relationships with all the other major nation states and ensure that our national interests are achieved and ensure that all relationships are based on mutual trust, constructive and progressive activities. So that will be the basis for our external policy.
Right. And the basis for you and the reason why you feel that to reflect the realities of 21st century world, India needs to be in the UN Security Council. What makes you feel that? Because that will also mean, hypothetically, of course, because UN needs to be revamped, but that also means veto power. That also means coming at a time when there are some other powers like China who have veto power right now and block several important resolutions. So your reasoning for having India being in the Security Council?
Well, it's a major reflection of global geopolitical power reality. And I must say, it's not just China. All the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council have veto power. So there are those other permanent members who have the right to exercise their veto power. So Sri Lanka as a whole has been very balanced. We want to make sure that we protect our interests and also ensure that interests of other nation states are also not compromised and neutralized. So we are very, very sensitive to ensure that we don't interfere into the affairs of other nation states. But we are also cognizant of the very close relationship that exists within our country and your great country, India. While saying that, we will also coexist with other states.
Finally, sir, let me ask you this, that what would be your number one expectation slash demand from India as, after the elections, as and when, the results come out, if what would you want to be the number one demand from India to ensure that the relationship gets cemented and also is in line with your vision in terms of Sri Lanka and the region?
Well, first and foremost, I must say I don't demand.
I said expectation slash demand.
I always use the power to persuade. I will use all available skills that I have at my disposal to persuade India to invest more in Sri Lanka, to support Sri Lanka to come out of this problem, to help the people of Sri Lanka, ensure that socio-economic stability, not to the interests of the ruling classes, but to the people themselves, that their socio-economic interests, their health interests, their education interests, all that matters in the whole rubric of humanitarianism, that those rights of the people are protected and enhanced. So I would use my power to persuade your great country, India, to protect Sri Lankan people's human rights, not just political and civic rights, their economic rights, their social rights, their right to life, right to alleviate poverty, right to alleviate unemployment, high inflation, right to have a country that spurs growth, equitable growth, and shared prosperity. And that's the arena in which we hope to cooperate with India.
I wish you all the best, sir. You look like a very persuasive man, and I'm sure your persuasive skills will not be tested so much. And wish you the very best, sir. And look forward to engaging with you after the elections as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for speaking to NDTV.
Always.